Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 22nd Ramapo Local Development Corporation. I'll call to order the meeting, and I will ask one of our fine attorneys, Ms. Gittleman, to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask the secretary to the corporation to call the attendance roll.
Mr. Winunu? Mr. Weissmandel? Mr. Rossman? Ms. Charles? Chairman Speck?
Here. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda, we have a proposal for directors and officers liability insurance.
Acceptance of the minutes?
Oh, I missed
What I
that.
have.
Thank you, we do. We have the acceptance of the minutes of the May 8th, 2019 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Anybody wish to make a motion? Motion to approve by Mr. Rossman, seconded by Mr. Wanunu. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Abstain, one abstention. Carries 3-0.
I would just note my new title as ASSISANT Town Attorney, so,
ASSI,
A-N-T.
that's a special title.
I'm not sure if it's meaning in that or not.
Think the worst.
I always do.
That's good. Assistant. It's the French word. It's the French word for assistant, the assistant.
It's always where the comma's placed, you know.
We'll move along to item 2, proposals, acceptance of proposal for D&O liability insurance. Mr. Wanunu, I think you
That's right.
have information for us about this one.
Okay, so as we discussed earlier, at least a couple of meetings ago, our D&O policy for the RLDC is coming due June 7th?
Yes.
June 7th. So far, what we've received is, from our current carrier, has chosen to renew us at a 0 increase, which is a great thing. I think we're going to start seeing some changes happening as some new things progress in the town. We're starting to gain some traction. So we are still waiting for some proposals. What I would, I'm sorry?
No, good.
What I would like to do and have the board approve thus far is approve this policy as is. There's a 0 increase year over year. Should anything come in that has at least comparable coverage that would be cheaper, at that point we could sort of have as is, so that it doesn't go below, above that, that we'd have the approval, but just sort of approve it at this level for now.
That seems to make a lot of sense. Anybody have any further discussion? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve, accept the proposal. Motion by Councilman, Mr. Wanunu, seconded by Mr. Rossman. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carries 4-0. And then we have our next item, which is adjournment. No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at an old copy of the minutes. We need to go into executive session. Ms. Gittleman is here to discuss with us 2 pending litigation matters. So I'll call for a motion to go into executive session to discuss those 2 matters. Motion by Mr. Wanunu, seconded by Mr. Rossman. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
What? Well, yeah, what, I think there are 2 litigation, there are 2 matters.
Oh, you're right, I'm wrong. One matter.
One matter, but
I stand corrected.
you also might want to take the item of new business to appoint the attorney before you go into the executive session under new business. Would you like to do that?
I think that should be something discussed in executive
Okay.
session. Yeah. So we'll go into executive session. I'll ask that besides the board members, that the secretary, both attorneys, chief of staff remain in the room.
And Mr. Lynch will stay as well as he as the treasurer.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Please stay, Mr. Lynch. Thank you. We have one item under new business that was prompted by the executive session. That is a resolution to authorize the town attorney's office to act as the legal counsel for the RLDC in a recently filed litigation matter involving Elm Street. Anybody wish to make such a motion?
May I place it on the record what I understand the motion is?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Resolved that the Ramapo Local Development Corporation authorize the Office of the Town Attorney to appear and defend and assert any cross-claims in a matter the RLDC is currently involved with in litigation entitled Ramapo Commons versus Ramapo Local Development Corporation et al., at no cost to the RLDC, subject to execution of conflict waivers by an officer of the RLDC and the town.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Any discussion? Motion? Motion by Mr. Rossman, second by Mr. Wanunu. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. And at this time, I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Rossman, second by Mr. Wanunu. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. The Ramapo Local Development Corporation meeting is hereby adjourned. And now we will start the Town of Ramapo regular board meeting scheduled for today at 7 p.m. I will ask Councilman Wanunu to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask the town clerk to call the roll.
Councilman Wanunu. Here. Councilman Weisman. Here. Councilman Rossman. Here. Councilman Deputy Supervisor Charles. Supervisor Speck.
Here. We'll now go into the public participation period. I'll remind everyone that we allow 3 minutes for public participation, whoever wishes to speak. Is anybody that wishes to speak? Yes, sir, in the front row. I'll just ask you to give your name and address. Thank you.
My name is Raphael Spear. I live at 521 South Pascack.
Was that Raphael
Yes,
Spear?
Aspir, A-S-P-I-R,
Thank you.
at 521 South Pascack. So for decades, there has been a bridge connecting South Pascack Road to Children's Park over the Pascack Brook. And about last year, maybe the end of the summer, around August, September, the bridge broke. I'm not sure exactly how it broke, but right now there's no bridge there. At the time, we called the Parks Department, and we'd been given some misinformation, not maliciously, I don't think, but just they told us they were going to fix it. And then, to make a long story short, after speaking to the Parks Director, we were told that there are no plans. There are no plans to fix the bridge. I would like to request that the bridge be fixed for a couple of reasons. One, it restricts access to the park from pedestrians. This includes a couple categories of people: children who obviously cannot drive. The walk is well over half a mile, and to go to the main entrance, and it requires walking on South Pascack Road, which is a dangerous road and has very little, if any, shoulder a lot of the way. Anybody wishing to walk their dog doesn't really want to put their dog into the car and then go. Anybody who would just like to get out of their house in that whole area and walk to the park can't really do that anymore because it's over a mile both ways to do that. Additionally, there are times where the Sabbath observers can't drive, so that makes the walk, especially with children and strollers, even dangerous. Forget about a waste of time. Talking about at least a half an hour walking each way from where the entrance is, not including where you live. Another point is that that bridge, in many ways, connects two areas of the community. The community can arguably be considered from Red Schoolhouse Road down, and the two areas to the west and east of Pascack Brook, there are very few passageways that go over the bridge. There's Lillian and there's Grotke, and that's about it. Those are over a mile apart, and so the bridge really connects the two areas as well. Additionally, I believe that the lack of pedestrian access to the park from the area lowers the property values. I can tell you, we personally don't think we would have bought the house if not for the pedestrian access to the park. Putting the kids into the car is a whole different experience than just walking to the park. If I want to take a jog, I can't do that really because by the time I get there, I'll have to come back. I think the bottom line is that it has significantly affected the quality of life to the residents of the area on the west side of the Pascack Brook. It was there for decades. We're not asking for something new. It was about 4 feet wide. It was basically plywood that went about 20 feet. I wouldn't think that it's tremendous engineering feat to put up this bridge. There already was a bridge there. You shouldn't need a big, a big review of the area, of the architecture. I think it should be fairly straightforward. And I think it's something that should really be considered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Esper.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Romanowski.
It's Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. There's another problem with the lights on Maple Avenue from the area on the top of the hill by Jeffrey Place all the way down to the Spring Valley line. The lights are out on both sides of the street. I just wanted to let you know about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Anybody else from the public wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to close the public participation period. Motion by Councilman Rossman, seconded by Councilman Weismandel. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carries 4-0. Move on to item 2, public hearing. Just by way of background, we had scheduled a public hearing on an amendment of the zoning law to permit the building inspector to issue partial building permits. One thing that we needed to do that we unfortunately did not at that time was to refer it to the planning board for their review. We can do that at this time. We can open the public hearing, and then I think we would have to continue the public hearing to a later date before we could make any decision on this issue. So at this time, I will open the public hearing on this matter. Anybody from the public wish to speak about the partial permit issue? Yes, Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Bruce Levine, 9 Robin Hood Road, Montebello, New York, 10901. This law is really ill-advised. It seems to me that it might be designed, and if it is not, it should be crystal clear in the statute itself that it should not toll any building, any existing zoning. What happens is people get zoned for a parcel, to build a parcel, and then they just don't build it. And there's a time limit for that until they get a building permit and they begin to do the process. If we're going to allow a partial building permit and that's going to somehow allow people to maintain a building permit forever, it's a really bad idea. And it's really a contravention of good planning principles, if nothing else. Secondly, I don't know whether you did an environmental review on this, but you need to do one. You need to do one. We're talking about putting in foundations on properties that are going to have fences around them. Now, so partial permits are an invitation to the creation of dangerous conditions that would fall under a nuisance law. What about the impact on water resources of putting in foundations without, and doing other things to the surface without doing, any kind of serious plans, or to wetlands? I just have to tell you, I grew up in this town, and I can tell you I know people who used to climb down bridges, right? This is an invitation for children to be harmed. I can't even remotely imagine why you would do this. If your intention is to expand the time available to someone who's gone through the zoning process, first of all, you shouldn't do it because they knew what the rules were. And now you're going to create some kind of backdoor way around it so that they can expand their time. If this was a Great Depression or even a Great Recession, where builders were right in the middle of starting their processes, and you were looking at a multi-year problem, and even the Great Recession didn't do this. The Great Depression did. Not in Ramapo. We don't have anything like that. Then you would do something like this, and you would put a 2-year limit on it. We're doing it for 2 years in an emergency because the economy demands it, right? That's what you would do. But to do it just plain, just because, what's the reason? What's the motivation for granting partial building permits to put in foundations? That just doesn't make any sense. So you're going to have a foundation sitting on a property for how many years? 10 years? And you think that's safe? And if you didn't do an environmental review, you should. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Didn't know this was ready, all primed.
Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Ms. Munitz.
I'm going to skip through some of this since you did adjourn this, and I assume that it will be adjourned for a date
That's right.
specific.
I'll also note that I think we're still waiting for the GML review. I don't,
Just
No, it's
literally
in.
came in today,
oh, came in today.
or yesterday,
Oh,
came in.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to pass out my notes. I won't read all of them, but some of my comments regarding the public notice should be paid attention to because I believe that this was improperly noticed, and it should be properly noticed in the future. I personally have pointed out that this practice that we've had of foundational permits without a local law has been illegal, and the practice was recognized by Judge Eisenpress in her decision with respect to 86 Highview. While I respect the town board for wanting to take the steps to pass a local law to allow foundation-only permits to be issued, this local law is currently written and worded, and in the context of the rest of the town code would be arbitrary and capricious. The practice of issuing foundation-only permits has been abusive in the past. The permits have been issued before all conditions of the site plans that they relate to have been met or resolved. They've been issued based upon building plans that are then later changed for the sole purpose of preventing site plans to be from expiring, which is a point that Mr. Levine said. This new local law does nothing to address the problems related to past unlawful issuance of partial permits and can easily be construed as a means to make a bad, illegal practice legal without making any attempt to correct and prevent future abusiveness. I've brought, and I'm going to submit a list, an 8-page list of 30 foundation-only permits. I mean, I've been trying to do my homework, and I really believe that the town should be doing its homework. The question should be, and you should be asking your building department to explain, why were these done? Why were they done at this point in time? What was the purpose? Did something get changed perhaps after the fact? We have a lot of situations, and from an environmental perspective, the 86 Highview is a very good example where all of the trees were cut down in the dead of summer at the last minute with no notice, based upon the issuance of a partial permit, while there were things going on, there were legal issues, there was stuff going before the ZBA. It was so abusive, and then now you have this lot that's just in total disrepair, that's been completely ruined, and will never be the same. And we need to take effort to make sure these things don't happen. Blueberry Commons was one that was cleared way in advance of any development. Highview Hills is a disaster. That was issued, at the last minute to keep a site plan from expiring, and then nobody took action again until the dead of summer, and they illegally cleared the entire, site, beyond even that which was, available under the law, and they never fulfilled the, conditions of the special permit. So I think we need to take a step and think about what's the purpose. There is a purpose to foundation-only permits, but you have to actually write the law so that we understand what the specific purpose is, and we need to make sure that that purpose is being fulfilled by this law in a manner that doesn't negate any of the other protections that the town of Ramapo residents have. So I'm going to submit some stuff into the record. And I just want to say I completely agree with everything that the GML says.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak, Mr. Romanowski, about this issue?
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. First of all, this is a public hearing. Since when has there been a time limit on public hearings? You had said nothing before this began about anything about having a time limit for the public hearings. Also, this is just another ill-conceived law being passed by the town of Ramapo. It makes no sense whatsoever. If you apply for a building permit because you want to do an entire building, why do you need a permit just to do all these foundations? If you're going to build something, you know beforehand what the total concept of the project will be, so you need to get a building permit for the entire project. This makes absolutely no sense. What are we going to have, a bunch of foundations all over the town of Ramapo? Again, this law will be abused, just like the law that had the trailers used for classrooms, which was greatly abused and not adhered to. And it just makes no sense. I don't know why you would do something like this with this law. Also, with just foundations and everything, What about water runoff? There'll be mud and everything else running down the roads and into the drains and ending up in all the lakes and ponds, and there'll even be more sand in Lake Suzanne than there is now. So I think you better rethink this whole idea and not have it. And I think you should really read the GML and adhere to what it says. This makes no sense whatsoever. Don't pass this law.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Anybody else wish to speak in this public hearing? Appears nobody. I would call for a motion to adjourn the public hearing. Mr. Sampson, what dates are available?
The next regularly scheduled meeting dates should be June 12th, June 26th, and then July 10th.
I would suggest we do June 26th to have sufficient time for referral to the planning board. Everybody, it's June 26th.
When is the
I don't know, it's early June. I'm not sure, Mr. Lynch, do you know?
I don't have it in front of me. It should be early June, though,
Well, we
yes.
said it was the 8th.
It might be, I'm just afraid that June 12th might be too close.
Right.
So why don't we do June 26th at 7 PM? And we'll adjourn it, and could we, in the same resolution, authorize referral to the planning board?
You may.
Okay. Is there a motion? Motion, Councilman Wanunu. Is there a second? Councilman Rossman. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. So we'll adjourn it to 7 PM, June 26, 2019. Very good. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
If I can request, Ms. Munitz present to the attorney with a list of foundation permits. Somebody could go through them and report back to the board. How many, and if any, are still just sitting foundations that are actually,
I would think the building inspector should be the one to do that, so.
We'll get you the status. Once I get the, if you give me the list,
Let's
I'll
have
be sure to
Mr.
get it to
Smith
the
give us a
building
report
inspector.
on those permits. Very good. Okay, thank you, Councilman Weissmandel. We'll go on to agenda item 3, Town Attorney A, settlement of a certiorari action.
If it pleases the supervisor and the board, this was discussed in the workshop session. The Village of Chestnut had issued violations that were withdrawn. Those violations precluded the tax exempt, but because they're withdrawn, there is no basis to prevent the tax exempt application from being realized. The Town Attorney's Office recommends that the resolution be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lynch?
This is or Mordecai?
Yes, it is.
I think our numbering is a little different. I'm not sure.
I have it as 3A1.
I have this 2A1.
Oh,
Do you have the
you might have an
the
old
latest?
agenda that
Do you
doesn't
the
have the public hearing.
I have what I have.
You got it. Very good. Then I'll call for a motion to approve.
latest? Share your agenda.
Motion by Councilman Rossman, seconded Councilman Newman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Mr. Wanunu, did you, Councilman Wanunu, you voted yes? Then it carries 4-0. We'll go to item 3B.
I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor. Move and second.
Moved by Councilman Rossman, seconded, I think, by Councilman Weissman.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to item 3B, amendment of a prior resolution to terminate a license agreement.
If I may, this is a prior action taken by the town board to terminate the license agreement with the Ramapo Equestrian Center. There are 2 grounds upon which it can be terminated. The second ground is what this particular resolution authorizes the board to take action, and the recommendation is that this particular resolution be approved tonight, so that the town attorney's office is authorized to provide the 90-day written notice of termination to the licensee.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We discussed this in depth on Monday. Any questions for Mr. Lynch? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve. Motion by Councilman Wanunu, seconded. Councilman Rossman, discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Going to item 3C.
This concerns the Ramapo Police Superior Officers Association. This was discussed in the Police Commission meeting and also in the workshop session. The recommendation is to approve the resolution which authorizes the agreement, but it only goes up to the end of this particular year.
Thank you. We've been provided with copies of the changes. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look it over. Any questions from Mr. Lynch? Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Wenunu. Is there a second? Second, Councilman Rossman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. We'll go to item 3D, settlement of grievances.
This particular matter is also discussed at the Police Commission meeting in our workshop session. It concerns grievances with regard to reimbursement of certain expenses. There was a compromise recommendation with regard to this matter that would authorize reimbursement for 2 of the 3 courses in the amount of $3,840.80.
Any questions? Motion by Councilman Wenunu to approve, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. And then we'll go to item E, settlement of claim damage to light pole.
This is also a matter which was an incident which the town attorney's office investigated. We're recommending that the settlement be set as set forth in the resolution.
And I believe that settlement will make us whole for all of our damage.
That is correct.
We discussed this on Monday. Motion by Councilman Wenunu, second Councilman Rossman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. And finally, settlement of claim and merit prize as subrogate of ERPS.
This was a collision involving a town vehicle and another vehicle. There's a dispute as to liability. The total damages were $4,600 and about $25. The town attorney's office has been able to reach a settlement where the town is only held 25% responsible. The payment would be $1,156.50. We recommend approval of the settlement.
Questions for Mr. Lynch? Motion to approve by Councilman Wenunu, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. We'll go on to item personnel. Ms. Condon.
Good evening. The first item, 4A, is a resolution to appoint a secretarial assistant less than full-time in the assessor's office. There's a vacancy due to a recent retirement, and a current employee has applied for that job.
Very good. We discussed this issue on Monday. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Condon? Call for a motion. Motion by Councilman Wenunu to approve, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Going to item 4B.
Sorry, Mr. Supervisor, I was distracted.
Oh, it was Councilman Wenunu and Councilman Rossman seconded it.
Thank you.
Carried 4-0.
Apologize.
Go to item 4B to appoint a part-time assistant fire safety inspector.
We currently have a vacancy in the Building, Planning, and Zoning Department, and we have a candidate who has been cleared pending some documentation for final approval. So this resolution appoints him pending final approval by Rockland County. He would start as long as the paperwork is done on June 17th.
Very good. Any questions from Ms. Condon? We'll have a motion to approve by Councilman Wenunu, seconded by Councilman Rossman. And any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0.
You say boy.
Wait, there was an aye. And just to clarify, we will be hiring as a part-time assistant fire safety inspector, Jake Timborough.
Yes.
Very
And
good.
The last item, item 3C, is a resolution to accept the resignation of a police lieutenant effective June 1st, 2019.
And again, this is a matter that was discussed in executive session extensively at Monday's workshop. Any questions from Ms. Condon? Motion by Councilman Wenunu, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Condon. Purchasing, we will go over to Ms. Montel.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to just state for all of these items I'm about to do, these were discussed extensively during our workshop on Monday. We had a presentation by our new Director of IT, Harry Grossman, on many of these. And in addition to that, all of the funding sources, though they're not currently listed on the resolution, have been discussed with the Finance Department, and funds are available for each of the items. The first item is the acceptance of the proposal for CRM system analysis in the amount of $11,970. We ask that you pass this resolution.
Any questions from Ms. Montel? If not, motion to approve. Motion by Councilman Wenunu, second Councilman Rossman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0.
Item 5B is the acceptance of the proposal for the expansion of our network storage. We're asking you to accept the proposal for Dell EMC in the amount of $29,156.03 as listed in the resolution.
Questions from Ms. Montal? Motion to approve, Councilman Wenunu, seconded Councilman Rossman. Discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? It carries 4-0.
Item 5C on the agenda, acceptance of the proposal for the migration to 365 implementation. We're asking you to accept the proposal of Elevated Computing in the amount of $9,240 as listed in your resolution.
Any questions? Motion, Councilman Wenunu, seconded Councilman Rossman. Discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0.
Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the proposal for the migration, the actual Office 365 licensing. We're asking you to accept the proposal in the amount of $41,552 annually for 3 years as listed in your resolution.
Questions from Ms. Montel? Motion? Motion by Councilman Weissman, second to Councilman Wenunu. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Carries 4-0.
Item 5E on the agenda is acceptance of the proposal to upgrade and modify various software services. We're asking you to accept the amount of, it's actually a decrease in the amount that we're going to be spending with LightPath Cablevision. Altice will be providing the services for LightPath and Cablevision. We're actually reducing our costs thanks to the investigative work of our new Director of Automated Services, Harry Grossman. We'll be
And you're
going
increasing
from,
services.
what?
We're getting increased services as
Right,
well.
increased amount of services, wider bandwidth. We were paying $9,250 per month. We'll now be paying $878.54 per month. I'm asking you to accept it as listed in the resolution.
Any questions from Ms. Montel? Motion?
Special thank you to our IT director.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman, for your diligence and increasing our services and cutting our costs. Any motion? Motion by Councilman Nunu, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Anybody opposed? That carries 4-0. We'll go on to item 6, Finance. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is simply a technical adjustment to our budget. We have received funds from the county totaling $511.01. These funds are specifically earmarked for DWI activities, and so we'll adjust the budget accordingly with your permission.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Lynch? Motion by Councilman Nunu, second by Councilman Rossman. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. Item 7, Highway 8, traffic control modification for Ralph Boulevard. Ms. Montel, do you want to handle that in the absence of the highway superintendent?
Certainly, however, Mr. Supervisor, I'm not aware of whether I would yield to Councilman Weissmandel.
Good point.
You asked for the map to be supplied by Frederick P. Clark.
I actually didn't. Actually, the supervisor's office was supposed to provide a resolution. I see it didn't make it.
Right. Mr. Galante hadn't gotten back to us. We do have, somebody had wanted something attached. It's up to the board
It
as
was
to.
just a resolution which doesn't exist, so I don't know how we're going to vote on it.
I think we have to put it over to the next meeting.
And I'd like to request Neil Road as well.
Neil Road is there.
Yes, no, I'd like to hold that up.
Hold it
That's
off.
fine. So why don't we do, we won't do anything. We'll just table these
Remove
two
the
to a
item.
later meeting. Very good. Then we'll go on to new business. I just have 2 items of new business. One item is, was on the workshop. We discussed it, but for some reason it wasn't on the agenda for tonight. It's the proposed local law authorizing extensions for Cold War veterans. Last year, we adopted a local law extending the exemption, but we need to revise that to select the amount of the exemption. The new local law adds that in, and it provides that, qualifying residential real property shall be exempt to the extent of 15% of the assessed value of such property, provided, however, such exemption shall not exceed $12,000 or the product of $12,000 multiplied by the latest state equalization rate for the assessing unit, or in the case of a special assessing unit, the latest class ration, whichever is less. I think it's appropriate that we adopt this.
Well, I think you're just setting a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, we need a public hearing.
That's what the memo.
You're absolutely right.
That's all that was supposed to be.
Do we need the 24-hour?
I think
You have to
I think the
suspend-
urge is to adopt it after the public hearing.
Right.
No, that was, you're right, that was.
I don't think we have a public hearing
We
set
need to
yet,
schedule a
right?
public hearing.
Right.
I think first we should suspend our 24-hour rule. We discussed it on Monday, but we didn't have the written resolution. And then second, we would, we have a resolution for the law, local law itself, which is what thirdly, we need a resolution to set a public hearing. What I would suggest is we set it for the June 26th date, that we have the other public hearing, also at 7 PM.
12? Should be.
7:01.
What? 7:01, thank you, sir.
Want to wait that long?
Can we do it earlier?
Do the 12.
Is there any time sensitive?
I don't know that we've noticed anything yet for this, so you're better off just doing it on the 26th.
I'd rather just have time to notice it properly. Very good. I was going to say that I think the timing of this is appropriate, as this would extend the tax exemption for Cold War veterans, and as we know, Monday will be the Memorial Day holiday. So I'll call for a motion to schedule.
Suspend the rules.
Suspend the rules, thank you. First, motion by Councilman Nunu, seconded Councilman Rossman. Discussion, all in favor? Anyone opposed? So carries 4-0. And now I'll call for a motion to schedule a public hearing for June 26th at 7:01 PM on the proposed local law. Motion by Councilman Nunu, seconded Councilman Rossman. Discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. And then the final item I have for new business comes from the RLDC meeting we held a bit earlier tonight. And at that time, the RLDC authorized the town attorney's office to serve as counsel in a particular litigation matter. I believe we would now need the town board to authorize the town attorney's office to act as counsel in that matter. So I'll call for a motion to have the town board serve as counsel for the Ramapo Local Development Corporation.
Attorney's office.
What did I say?
And that's also
Town attorney's office.
it's also subject to execution of waivers as was set forth in the RLDC motion.
Correct. We can do that subsequent to tonight, and that's in a matter of concerning recent.
The Ramapo Commons versus the RLDC.
Thank
Do we
you.
have to suspend the rules again?
We suspended it once. I think that counts for I think that's for the meeting.
Still in suspension.
We're still in suspension. Thank you. So I'll call for a motion to authorize the town attorney's office to act as counsel in this matter for the RLDC. Motion by Councilman Rossman. Second, Councilman Nunu. Discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries 4-0. And we'll go to, anybody else have any new business? We'll go to council members' comments. We'll go to supervisor's report. And I'll just say that I think at this time, again, I would like to adjourn the meeting in honor of the Memorial Day holiday, in which we remember, pay tribute to those who gave their lives fighting to protect our freedoms in this country. And it's a debt we can never repay and a memory that we should never forget. So I'd like to have a unanimous motion to adjourn the meeting in their honor. Motion, Councilman Rossman, second, Councilman Nunu. All in favor? Hereby unanimously adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.